I've lived in this town all my life. I know all the weird traditions that coming with living in a place as remote as mine. But nothing explains what happens at our deer park. I used to come out here most evenings during the pandemic, park up by the base of the hill overlooking the sanctuary, and just immerse myself in nature. I was always mindful of the distance I had to keep from the deer, particularly during mating season. And it wasn't like the deer didn't know what a car was. These were in their own reserve, sure, but the trail cut right through their vast fields, and they'd grown accustomed to seeing cars all manner of times in the day and evening, which is what made the situation all the more unsettling. Starting last week, a sign was put up on the entrance gate to the park. Impossible to miss as the car slowed and the tires rolled over the metal grates. With it being the late hours and very few cars on the road, I decided to stop and read it in full. A polite notice to our valued visitors entering the Oboro Nature Reserve. Our deer are exhibiting unusual behaviors, and we are politely requesting you observe the following guidelines in place as to best protect yourself and the well-being of our deer. Number 1. While the park is open 24 hours a day, we are recommending visitors do not stop their cars during observable grazing periods and on midsummer nights. You are welcome to drive through and observe from a distance, but please, do not slow down or stop. Number 2. Should you be slowed or stopped at any other time, and the deer be curious of your vehicle, act calmly and do not speed up. Let them inspect you and judge you as a safe passerby. If they are snorting, that is your cue to leave. Number 3. There have been reports of deer standing on their hind legs and remaining idle in the fields. These rumors are a fallacy. Please do not pay any attention to them. Number 4. There is a black stag that holds dominion over the western herd. His antlers are sharp and his stride is impressive. But do not attempt to approach him. Please pay him the respect you would normally, and do not stare at any of the females in his harem, or he will charge you. Bucks are not friendly. Number 5. Deer remember faces. They can recognize you from a distance, and will verify your smell as you get closer, listening intently the entire time. There are many of them and only one of you. You would do well to mind that. Number 6. Lastly, no matter what salacious rumors have been propagating amongst the community, the deer are not congregating in the dead of night. Deer are social animals that sleep and graze together in a herd. This is normal. The deer are acting normally. Drive safely, keep your doors locked, and have a lovely drive in the Oboro Nature Reserve. Strange, right? The notice wasn't your usual steel sign with carefully embossed wording. Rather, it had been hastily marked up and nailed to the wall adjacent to the welcome sign, as if in a hurry. I'd not heard any sorts of rumors around town, and nobody had complained about the deer park. We're a population of maybe 2,000, so it's not hard for word to get out. Still, I had my routine and intended to stick to it. Some of the info was valuable for newcomers. There was indeed a large black buck who paraded the western herd. His name was Jojo, and I fully believed he would gore anyone who overstayed their welcome or got too close. A beautiful specimen of muscle and authority. He ensured his harem never strayed too far, and seemed to be borderline obsessed about making sure they never went across to the eastern side, where the large swaths of trees sat. In fact, I'd observed him on a couple of occasions actively nudging or ramming young males away from the split in the road, and back to safety. On the rare occasion that a member of the herd crossed the line, he would refuse to acknowledge them, and actively kept them away from entering, as if they were banished. As I drove through the archway, I realized I'd not seen as many deer in the eastern section of the park, looking out my window and staring at the makeshift forest to my right. A burning question came to the forefront of my mind that didn't leave as I reached the hill overlooking both sides of the park. Where are the rest of the deer? It was unnerving to sit there and try to enact my ritual of writing under the clear night when there was a strict absence of the herd where they should have been. I tried to focus, but something was pulling my eyes back to looking at that same spot time and time again. Eventually, I decided that I needed to get some fresh air and take a better look, satiate my curiosity, and then, with my mind at ease, I could get back to finishing my blog. The air was humid when I stepped outside, no breeze, and the stars were out on full display. Thank goodness for no light pollution in the countryside. I left the engine running and walked to the barrier my car was parked in front of, leaning over and taking a pair of binoculars I brought for slower days, when I wanted to see the deer in better detail. As I directed my vision to the eastern herd, I saw something darting in the tree line. It was quick, hairy, and seemed to move the second my binoculars motioned toward it. Even a deer shouldn't have been that spooked, especially from this distance. My joints seized up, and I damn near dropped the binoculars when I heard a familiar snorting from behind me. I turned and saw Jojo, standing 15 feet from me, just by the rear of my car, his eyes gleaming in my rear lights. His head was low, and his antlers were thick, sharp, and aimed at me. At that moment, I didn't know if he was going to charge or whether I should have been fighting for my damn life. Instead, I did as I was instructed and stayed still, not making sudden movements as he snorted again, closing the gap between us slowly. As he got within 5 feet of me, he reared his head up. I saw the most baffling expression on his face. For a fleeting moment, fear. Something rippled through the eastern forest, and birds began flying away in droves. Some of the deer herd in the western area were circling something, and Jojo immediately bounded down and out of sight to control the chaos. I wasted no time getting in my car and driving down after them, keeping the doors locked and the windows open a crack, my speed at a decent crawl. As I came along the embankment that connected to the road, I saw Jojo running full sprint toward another deer. He knocked the rival over and contorted the body as it skidded across the grass and fell into the trail just ahead of my car. I knew I wasn't supposed to, but I stopped the car and waited. In a choice between breaking the rules and breaking my car, I'd choose the former any day. The western herd deer under Jojo's command were gathering up behind him, making horrific shrieks of terror. Jojo strode up and bowed his head again in front of the still contorted deer, antlers on full display and dripping with black blood. It was a clear threat. Do not come back here if you value your life. I started wondering how I would safely get this deer out of the way, or if I could mount the grass on the other side and go around it, when I saw something horrific unfold in front of me. The deer's body twisted itself around, and the limbs snapped to reset themselves. The head was still cracked at an ugly angle, bones sticking out of the sides as it got onto shaking legs. When it screamed, it sounded as if its lungs were filled with blood. A horrible, muted cry of anguish that backed up every other deer but Jojo. I don't know what was keeping this fucking thing standing, but it let its head flop lazily around as it carefully backed away onto the eastern side of the reserve, before bounding into the tree line as if nothing was wrong. My rational mind chalked it up to adrenaline and the instinct to survive, but it was impossible to shake the feeling that something was wrong. I carried on driving as soon as the deer was out of sight, not looking at Jojo or the others as I headed down the trail. For the remaining few minutes, I felt unseen eyes staring intently at me until I crossed the threshold and back into civilization. I'd never been more grateful to see other humans, or my bed. Something about the whole incident just took it out of me. As I slept that night, I dreamed I was a deer alongside Jojo, frolicking in the herd and grazing peacefully. But as I turned my eyes upward to the sky, a bitter chill on the wind, I saw the moon bathed in an almost purple plume, a strange light cast onto the land, and noises rustling from the woods opposite. I don't know how I knew this, but something in me instinctively knew we weren't supposed to go there. I saw shapes begin to emerge from the trees, and that same horrible shriek rang out as I woke up in a sweat. I leaned forward to catch my breath and grab a glass of water. As I changed positions to reach for my nightstand, I swore I heard the sound of something running up the trail to my house. I was probably still half asleep, but that didn't make it any more damn unnerving. I decided it would be best to drive out the next night and confront my concerns head on. If I wasn't going to sleep soundly, then I should use my time wisely and document what I was seeing. Maybe pass it to the rangers in the morning, right? When I drove back out there last night, the atmosphere was vastly different. A mist was enshrouding the trail, and the majority of the deer on the western side huddled together, shaking and staring intently at the other side of the nature reserve. I couldn't see Jojo anywhere. Strange, I thought. Alpha males patrolled their herds dutifully. Why wasn't he there? I parked up at my usual spot, and, making sure he wasn't around, I pulled out my binoculars again and stared at the eastern area. The clouds were just beginning to part as the moon shone through. There was movement all along the tree line as shapes began emerging one by one. I think it took my mind a moment to process what I was seeing. I'd finally seen the deer on the eastern side, but they were wrong. Very, very wrong. Standing on their hind legs and taking confident, awkward steps, they marched out of the trees with their heads craned to the sky, all of them emitting that horrible sound, like their heads were being held underwater as they screamed. It reverberated in my ears and made my skin break out in goosebumps. There were dozens of them, maybe a couple hundred. Some were dragging a structure out with them, others hauling a writhing shape I couldn't quite see. They congregated in a small huddle, the center of which was obscured from my vision. I looked over to Jojo's herd and saw the fear in their eyes. So many of them shaking, their teeth bared. A primal fear we humans have largely lost in the safety of being the dominant species. But this night showed me we're not as powerful as we think we are. As the huddle broke away and began walking again toward their edge of the field, I saw what they'd been huddled around. Jojo. He was still alive, but barely moving, breathing heavily with his eyes glazed over. They dragged him to the structure, a primitive set of steps with a hollowed-out hole in its center, coated in a thick substance on the sides, just large enough for Jojo to be thrown into. I watched these things, these not deer, use their front hooves to hoist him up and into the hole, his screaming incessant the entire time. They stood around it, their necks craned as they stared at the moon and shrieked. I looked up at them, wondering if what they sought was up there in the skies, a kind of primitive god for these creatures. I should have known better, of course. Whatever god these not deer prayed to, It did not reside above. No, it lurked deep below. A low groan called out in response. It possessed the same blood-filled lungs these monstrosities had, and Jojo's deer huddled closer together at its roar. Jojo had stopped moving, his crying completely gone as the not deer too fell silent and formed a circle around their altar, snorting in unison. It grew to a fever pitch before something began dragging Jojo from beneath, ripping at his limbs and pulling until a horrific squelch indicated the top had separated from the bottom. The hole spurted out blood and chunks of deer as the not deer celebrated, danced in the rain, and feasted on the pieces. One final roar rang out from the unseen creature. It shook the ground, and I felt my balance waver for just a moment, steadying myself on the car. I know I should have booked it out of there, but I was desperate to understand what I was seeing, rationalizing that perhaps this was a bizarre art piece, maybe a protest from an animal rights group, or even a bunch of edgy, satanic teens. But that rational voice in my head grew very, very quiet when I grabbed my binoculars to look again. Every single one of them was staring up at me, emotionless, black eyes fixated on my position. I didn't wait any longer. I drove out of there at a breakneck pace, not looking at either side of the park on my exit, and damn near coming off the road with a lack of traction. As I got to the archway, my tires smashing against the grate, I realized I'd inadvertently attracted the forest ranger on duty. He pulled me over and walked up to my window, a friendly smile on his face. "You know there's a speed limit here for a reason, right, son?" Yeah, I'm sorry. Got a little spooked is all. I smiled back, nerves shot to hell. He raised an eyebrow. "You didn't break one of our rules now, did you?" "Oh no, I kept to them. It's just, well, Jojo got attacked by the eastern deer, and I don't think he's doing well. It was just a shock to take in." I figured telling a half-truth would be best. Couldn't exactly say what I thought I'd seen now, could I? "That's so. Well, they make their choices carefully. We don't know much, but we do know not to interfere. This is how it's always been. Animals have strange practices. You get how it is. But so long as they didn't look at you, you're fine. Deer remember faces, after all. Thanks for visiting. Drive safe." He smiled again and tipped his hat, before walking off to his station. My blood ran cold, and I couldn't get those words out of my head on the entire drive home. But so long as they didn't look at you, you're fine. I have not stepped outside my house since last night. I live in a remote part of the village, and while I enjoy the privacy, it's been a hotbed for strange noises and unsettling emotions. Everywhere I go in my home, I feel like I'm being watched by those same vacant eyes. What happens now? What happens to those they look at? I can't get their eyes out of my head, and I can't sleep worth a damn either. This isn't going to end until I figure out what they want. I wish I had more for you. I wish I could tell you what the not deer were, what they prayed to, why they sacrificed, what the ranger knew. But there are so many unknowables that it makes my head spin. It's just like being deep in the woods. So many twists and turns. You never know which is the right path to take, and what danger lurks behind every tree. I don't know what the deer are doing. I don't know what is going on at that park. But if you value your life, you'll stay far, far away from it. And whatever monster they're praying to. Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jordan Group Horror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward. And if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you, which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.